Hello, it's Scott Manley here. With Chandrayaan 3 finally in lunar orbit, it is hoping to land on the moon and put to bed all those bad memories from Chandrayaan 2. But in the last couple of days, I think I've finally got all the information I need to put together, to understand why Chandrayaan 2 crashed. And this has been one of these high profile events where we never really got a good answer for exactly what went wrong. We had a lot of clues here and there, but they never quite fit together, even up until like a few days ago. But yes, some fans in India sent me a presentation that was recorded by S Somnath, what's his name? Sridhara Panikar Somnath. He's the head of ISRO, and he basically gave a presentation at a memorial lecture and included a fair number of extra pieces of information, which I think now makes everything work. So yeah, during the landing live stream back in 2019, we spent a lot of time watching this descent, and we never really got good telemetry. We had the camera frequently cutting away from the screens showing the descent rates, to showing pictures of the audience, to showing the kids that had turned up because they'd won competitions, to the staff, to of course Narendra Modi, the prime minister of the country. And yeah, we barely got to see what actually happened in terms of the telemetry. So we never really figured out exactly how the spacecraft went from looking like it was in a normal attitude to upside down and heading towards the ground. We heard news reports subsequently that told us, for example, that the engines had generated a bit too much thrust, and that led to a software error which caused the crash. And that, for some people, satisfied them, but it didn't satisfy me because that's not the complete story. We'd also heard from other sources that the vehicle had completed a 410-degree rotation during the final portion of the flight, and that is a symptom of a software error in the guidance, and it's definitely a cause of the impact, but that still doesn't explain why that happened. And more recently, we heard about a handful of software constraints that had affected this. For example, the navigation system had operated in such a way that it didn't correct the error due to the high engine thrust as this was happening, and instead it let that build up before making a correction. We heard that the part of the problem was that when it was correcting, the spacecraft was restricted in rotating to a rate of 10 degrees per second. And, this part of the reason we were told this was because Chandrayaan 3 has had this lifted to 25 degrees per second. And finally, the landing area was small, too small, so that by the time the situation had developed, it had no way to reach the targeted landing area, and that confused the software, again leading to its ultimate crash. And again, all of this is very interesting, but it didn't really fit together in a full cause to effect chain that led to the crash. But now, watching this presentation, there's a few important bits of information, not all of it in the slides, and the slides are actually very hard to read. But yeah, firstly, we did get an actual timeline, which I hadn't seen before, and that included some speeds and altitudes which were expected during this, along with some times of what actually happened. And we also got a comment about how there were changes in Chandrayaan 3 to the engine valve performance, because at high actuation rates, the engine valves, when they were trying to open and close the valves quickly, they apparently misbehaved and didn't perform as expected. So, putting all this stuff together now, I think I have the complete sequence in my head, and it satisfies me, although I'd still like to get more detailing on exactly what the software was trying to do. So yeah, what happens is we go back to the start of the descent, and the spacecraft begins its deorbit burn. This is called the rough braking phase, and it uses maximum thrust because it's just trying to get down and slow down as much as possible. It takes about 10 minutes to do this, and during this, everything was fine. There was no problem at all. The problem began when it transitioned to the fine braking phase, where it had to make a series of maneuvers to get onto the ground. The first thing it did after the rough braking phase was transition to something called the camera coast phase. In this situation, the spacecraft held a specific 50-degree attitude. it reduced the thrust, and during this hold, the camera was held in position, pointed at the same angle, so that it could look at the landing site, it could determine where it was, perform its navigation, everything else. And so the spacecraft in this mode wasn't making changes to its attitude, and specifically wasn't making any changes to its thrust. So that was the situation where the engine thrust being too high finally kicked in. So why did the engine thrust get too high here? Well, they were going from the high thrust rough braking phase to a lower thrust regime, and I'm guessing they actuated the valves close at maximum speed, and they didn't move, or they didn't move far enough, but they ended up with more thrust during this phase. It's now it's hoping to be descending, but in fact it's actually beginning to rise upwards above its planned trajectory. And the spacecraft is looking at this and saying, oh, I gotta fix this, but I gotta hold the camera straight, So it's conflicted, and it ends up out of alignment. Now, how much was this? We actually can get some ideas about how different this was from the planned one, because the charts that we have show that at the start of the camera coast phase, it was supposed to be descending at 62 meters per second and moving 146 meters per second in horizontal. And at the end of this phase, it was supposed to be descending at 76 meters per second and moving 92 meters per second in the horizontal. So if you just do vector math on that and account for the lunar gravity, then the deceleration, or the thrust, should be about 2.13 meters per second. So that is significantly lower when, if you look at the 30 seconds leading up to the end of rough braking, they're decelerating at about 3 meters per second. So there is a significant reduction in the thrust as they go into the camera coast phase. Now, we don't have the detailed telemetry, but we do have like one data point where it flashes up on the screen for a moment. And if you assume that that is roughly close to where the rough braking, the camera coast ended, then it would tell us that it's decelerating at about 2.78 meters per second. So that's 13% higher. And it doesn't sound like much. It's about 0.6 meters per second, but that's being added up and accumulated over 38 seconds. So it comes out of this camera coast phase, and it is hundreds of meters off its target trajectory. It's going like many meters per second away from its ideal speed. And at this point, it now has the task to begin the correction. It's higher up, and it is further away from the landing site than they originally planned. So what does the spacecraft do? Well, I think, and this is a guess because we don't have the attitude information, I think the spacecraft begins to pitch towards the target. It points itself at the target and ends up pointing inverted as it's trying to lose the extra altitude. And as it's doing this, the rotation is being commanded at a rate which is only 10 degrees per second. So it takes, 36 seconds to complete a full 360 degrees rotation. So it's performing this correction, chasing this ideal point that it wants to be in terms of speed, altitude, and location. And it can't rotate fast enough to get to it. It performs this rotation very slowly. It comes back to vertical. And by that point, it is now headed down towards the lunar surface too fast for it to actually land. And it ends up crashing. According to the numbers, it crashes 55 seconds, I think, after the end of the course braking phase. So yeah, 54 seconds after the end of the camera coast phase, sorry. The last telemetry that they got on the ground was 7 seconds before impact. And they actually give you the impact speed and the telemetry and the calculated impact speed. And that suggests that it was actually trying to decelerate against its velocity, but it just simply wasn't generating enough thrust at that point to slow down. So this all fits together. You've got a navigation system that is chasing an ideal descent trajectory, which is totally fine if you're close to that descent trajectory. But once you go off of that, you need larger corrections, and the constraints they'd put on those corrections meant that it was unable to do this. Also, it just was making extreme corrections, whereas they could have just throttled the thing down, but they didn't anticipate ever being this far off. There was a lot of comments about how the design of the software for Chandrayaan 2 was built with the assumption that every step was going to succeed correctly. There was no like building of robust software with plans for how they might fix problems. There was no failure-oriented software design where you try to make your software robust to handle these conditions. And that is something that they are very much devoted to on Chandrayaan 3. There's a lot of contingencies where if they find themselves in a situation where they are coming up short on their landing area, that they will just land wherever they can. It's not perfect, but they will accept a soft landing on the moon rather than a crashed landing on the moon, even if it's in the wrong place. The other thing about all this, my hypotheses based on this data is that it neatly fits the Doppler plot that we got from radio amateurs who they used radio telescope to track the carrier wave, and we get this nice Doppler plot. Now the Doppler plot, what you're doing is you're looking at how the frequency of the transmission changes as the spacecraft slows down, because it's moving over the surface of the moon, and as it slows down it changes the frequency. And we can see this sort of curve here where it goes up and then there's this wiggle on the end. Now if you put the 38-second camera coast phase in here, you can actually see a very small change in the gradient as it switches to this lower thrust regime. And then immediately after that, we have about 54 seconds of wiggles back and forth as the guidance software tries to figure out what it should do with this massive discrepancy from its planned landing or planned trajectory. And that fits in nicely. It fits into these observations. So yeah, look, as I said, I think the main thing here is they go very deeply into the changes to the software design, how they don't just run their simulations with numbers right in the middle of the distribution. They ran their simulations with the 6 sigma extrema to make sure that they can handle the really extreme versions and correct for things. They fixed obvious problems like the 10-degree rotation rate is now a 25-degree rotation rate. They've reduced the rate of the valve actuation to avoid the hardware issues. And they've also added a larger landing area so that they can work with that. And of course, that is on top of all the actual physical changes, including larger fuel tanks, more robust landing hardware, laser systems, laser altimeter. And yeah, I'm hoping that this will actually get down there. But yeah, this is my version. I would love to get more detail on what was wrong with the software. Of course, as it's been pointed out, that the actual failure analysis committee report has never been made public. It has been people went to court to try to get it released, and the Indian court said, well, that's up to ISRO. This is potentially a national security issue. I don't know how it would be a national security issue. Maybe it contains the names of some programmers who made some big mistakes. I don't know why they're so reticent to reveal this, but I'm hoping that after Chandrayaan 3 lands, maybe when they're basking in the glory of this success, they will finally feel compelled to reveal the report about the failure now that they've been vindicated. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.